Hello and welcome to Episode 2 of the Gibraltar FA podcast. This week we're discussing refereeing on the rock. With me today is Gibraltar FA referee manager Patrick Canepa and Seth Galia, senior referee and last week's 2024 Rock Cup final ref. Guys, thanks for coming on first and foremost. You guys good? Well?
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Perfect. We'll get right into it. I want to touch on how you guys got into refereeing. And Patrick, we'll start with you. Obviously, as referee manager, the more senior referee here. Can you just talk us through that process?
Actually, Seth has been refereeing longer than I did, actually, now that you say it. I refereed for about 10 years. I started off in 2014. I'd been wanting to do it for about 2 or 3 years beforehand, but just with work commitments, I never got around to doing it. Yaro Borg, ex-referee, he's the one that brought me into it. So, he brought me in and then I just picked up from there. Did it for 10 years.
And yourself, Seth?
Yeah, very, very similar. I think we began in the same season, albeit I did it in November 2013 and you joined slightly after. So. But as I alluded to last time we spoke, I was playing football, doing my GCSEs at the time. And one of the Bayside PE teachers, Stuart Bonavia, was a referee at the time, and he said as part of the course we could all sign up for the referee course, which, as you mentioned, was delivered by Yaro Borg. I was playing football with his son Ishmael at the time, and did the referee course. Didn't think I'd enjoy it as much, and when I realised that it was going quite well, my playing career wasn't going so maybe just as well. I thought, where can this thing lead? So I haven't looked back since.
Like you said, you haven't looked back. What are some of the highlights, maybe the challenges that you faced in this?
I think certainly one of the most challenging things is when you start refereeing at a young age, you're refereeing players who you maybe played against, players that you're going to school with at the time. So it can be quite challenging. But I think the more you progress, the more you realise that actually it has its advantages, because if you know the players and you can chat with them and they understand. Look, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But they're more understanding when you do so, as long as it's obviously an honest mistake. But in terms of some of the achievements, I mean, as you alluded to, I refereed the cup final last week, and as any referee may say, to referee the cup final for your home domestic cup competition, it's one of the biggest honours you can have.
I was watching the cup final. In my opinion, I think you did quite a good job. There was no glaring mistakes, shall we say. Your thoughts, Patrick? Obviously, you're watching the match as well. What did you think of the 2024 Rock Cup final?
Overall, it was a good result. As a referee perspective, the referee team delivered in all fronts. They worked well together. Became pretty challenging towards the last few minutes of the game, which is normally expected, considering what was at stake. Europa came out strong in the second half, and it made it difficult for Lincoln, and there was a few hundred fans as well in the stadium, so that brings the pressure to the players. But to be fair, Seth and his team, they got over the line, so they did a pretty good job overall.
Seth alluded that's one of his proudest moments of his career. Looking at your refereeing career, what would you say is one of the proudest moments?
There's probably a few. I mean, I was very delighted to have travelled with Jason when he got a lot of his appointments, European club competitions. So I managed to travel with him for about 5-6 years. I also refereed the Rock Cup a few years back, which was Lincoln and Glasses. That was a good Rock Cup final as well. There's a few of them there.
Awesome. Obviously, Seth's mentioned that he's quite young when he got into refereeing, still very young. Have you got any tips for any young up-and-coming referees?
Absolutely. I mean, I started at, what you probably think at an older age of 31. So I think my biggest regret was not doing it sooner. I mean, like I mentioned earlier on, I've been wanting to do it for about 2 or 3 years. And I think if I had started at 2 or 3 years beforehand, my career may have turned out a little bit different. So I would say definitely if you are interested, give it a go, definitely. And the younger you start, the more time you have to progress, and also gain experience more than anything else before advancing forward. So, and that's what we want to do with the likes of Seth and Dennis, who's at the age of 24 and 25. Still young referees when you think of it, but he's been around the game. Both of them have been around the game for a decade now as well. So, experience is key.
Touched on it there perfectly, that you've been in the game for about a decade. In that decade, football in Gibraltar has professionalised a lot. So what would you say the current state of play is compared to when you started officiating 10 years ago?
Yeah, and I think actually that's a really good way of putting it, because it's all well and good to look at where we are now, but if you actually look where we've come from in that decade, I mean, we've improved leaps and bounds. I mean, in terms of the professionalism of the players, the coaches, and with those things, us as referees need to go up. I think when every game is played, especially in the Gibraltar Football League, which I referee on, there's a lot at stake for every club. So I mean, every match of football ever is going to be very passionate, and everyone's going to have their strong feelings, whether it's grassroots football or professional football. But that's why it's the best game. But us as referees, we need to go in and we need to prepare for it, and to mirror the respect level that the clubs deserve, because you can't go in and if you make a mistake, a striker won't score every goal, a goalkeeper won't save everything, and the coach might not get it right. But as long as the mistakes which we make as referees are honest, they're not down to poor fitness and bad application of law, I think those two are completely inexcusable, especially where we are now, as you correctly alluded to. But as long as we, as referees, are prepared to deliver on that level, I think that that's what the clubs deserve.
I think it's very important for people to understand the commitment of our referees. For some reason, sometimes people just think the referees just turn up, do the job, and away they go. Far from it. It's far from it. Especially now, we're working harder with the different categories of referees that we have. Raymond Gomez is working closely with the youth referees, which since the turn of the year, we've managed to get a pretty good influx of younger generation referees, 16, 17 years old. So our biggest thing now is that how are we going to keep them interested and also develop them? When we move to the senior referees, they're getting training programs, 6-7 training sessions a week. That's then along with their matches, they're doing a match or two a week as well that they're refereeing. Online training, workshops as well. Whenever there's a break in the football league, and then also when they're not doing GFL, helping out with the refereeing there, they're also helping with the youth football. So commitment is very high.
That brings me to the next point that I want to discuss, which is training. But firstly, as referee manager, your plans, your insight, your vision for how refereeing is going to move forward. We've touched on how far we've come, but how much farther can we go?
I think is my biggest thing I'm looking at is the development of the referees in all aspects. I'm very happy with the level of refereeing that we have, considering that the level, what our league is. I think we're very on par with the level of what the players are. But I'm thinking about now is how we're going to get them to the next step. A few projects I'm looking at is more exchanges with other FAs, training camps as well, going abroad, helping out with, trying to look at our younger referees, Seth and Dennis, to go away and do officiate some matches abroad at youth international level. So, but this is all what those are the things that I'm looking at then, really.
Perfect. And like I said, I want to touch on the training element. Obviously, Seth, you're a very fit guy. I've been around with you guys whilst you've been doing your training programs, and it is very intense. So can you maybe talk us through that process?
Yeah, so I mean, as I alluded to earlier, the referee now needs to be an athlete and needs to be seen to be an athlete. I mean, as the pace of play constantly increases, we need to be able to and be seen to keep up with it. As Patrick mentioned, we now get support every week from David Mitchell, our fitness coach, who provides us with 7 training sessions per week based on our matches. So it complements our schedule accordingly. And in terms of fitness, we have 4 fitness tests a season, which we need to complete. These are in line with those expectations from both FIFA and UEFA's match officials. So it's the same fitness testing that they get in all other member states. Although it is the fitness testing that we do here. So we need to make sure that we comply with it. And for a small country, we certainly punch above our weight when it comes to this aspect, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, I've seen these sessions myself. They are intense. Would you say that the average person would be surprised as to how much goes on behind the scenes?
Absolutely. Yeah. And just considering as well, I mean, we appoint observers to matches. We provide feedback on the performance. But even still, just on the training side and the fitness aspect, we've brought in support to on a casual level to help our current assistant, our current referee fitness coach, to work. So this will allow now Dave to work closer with our elite referees and not just provide them a training program, but feedback on what their sessions are and how they're going to work, identify where the strengths and weaknesses are, and then maybe Seth is lacking on his speed off the mark, so strength and conditioning is being set by Dave. And then even with the youth now as well, because we want to make sure that the youth they are aware of what is going to be coming their way if they choose to follow this as a career.
Perfect. We've talked a bit about obviously the challenges that you guys have faced. On the flip side, how rewarding is it being a referee?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the best decisions I ever made was to take that referee course. As a football fan, somebody who loves football, I was watching it every weekend. But maybe wouldn't have had the opportunities to have played at such a high level, to have had these opportunities as a referee. I mean, it's been completely rewarding from my part to have officiated in some of these top European stadiums and refereed some players. Like I mentioned to you when we last spoke, these are players who, when I was refereeing at youth team level, are now playing in the Premier League, and these are opportunities which they don't come by very often. So I'd certainly encourage any young boy or girl who's looking to, or maybe is considering taking up the referee course, to give it a go, because there's opportunities to be had.
Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard work. It is hard work, especially, like I said, I mean, we've stepped it up now the last few months with the training program and online training and workshops and so on. So I can understand at times when a referee may have to turn around and say to us, look, I may have to step back just for a little bit just to, sort myself out and then get back into it as well. Yeah. But they normally come back because they understand what refereeing brings to them. Refereeing is a career. Yeah. It helps shape you in life. It helps you prepare for just everyday tasks. Yeah. That feeling, I suppose, I think where on the field of play, that knowing when you've made the right decision, or rather than blow a free kick and you're given a great advantage for a scoring opportunity, and even better that they score from it. As a referee, that's one of the things which I enjoyed the most. Okay. And then I think also the main thing is just performing as a team and how you become close with your teammates, and just doing it well on the field.
Brilliant. I think we can't talk about refereeing without maybe tackling one of the darker clouds. Some people would see it as the abuse that the officials get, especially in a place as small as Gibraltar. Everyone knows each other. So how much of a problem is abuse locally?
I think a lot of it is, like you said, it's probably a little bit harder here because of where we are and the people that we know. So personally, since I've been refereeing, most of the times when something happened on the field, it'll normally stay there. Yeah. And you could always identify, especially when there was a pause in the game, we could hear the spectators all shouting, whatever it is that they were shouting, but it never really evolved to anything else. Not really there. I think since stepping into the role as a referee manager, the biggest thing is, which I was aware of already, but even more so now, because every Monday morning I read all the reports from the weekend, is seeing what is happening in youth football, and that's probably the worst thing at the moment. It's very shameful, honestly, if I'm going to be honest. It is a minority, but especially when we're thinking that our young referees who are 16 and 17 years old, I mean, we had who have just joined us since the turn of the year. We've had about 12 that have come in, which is a really good intake, and already they are already saying what they're experiencing through maybe spectators or coaches, and even at times when it may just be a moment of words said because of frustration. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that they've got to remember is that they're just kids, and not just for the kids as well, even for the referees, the adults who come in as well. We're always developing, we're always working to better ourselves as well. And I mean, as a coach, would you really shout at your player and continue to shout at them and put even more pressure on them when they've just missed an open goal?
Yeah, of course.
So let the referee make those mistakes. Of course. It is youth football. They're not going to win the World Cup. So let them. As long as it's not safety, I think is the biggest one, then we can try and tackle it that way. But overall, it's just allow the referees to referee.
I suppose with youth football as well, most of the abuse or the difficult moments that a referee will face won't come from the players as much as maybe the parents in the stands or the coaches. Is there any way that you can envisage us sort of dealing with that?
I think, well, you just touched on it there, but remember the players feed off what is their surroundings. So if the coaches or the parents or the spectators are being over enthusiastic, over shouting and trying to, we've heard it before on the side where we've heard kick him, and you're like, really, come on. Well, guess what that kid is going to do? He's going to kick him, even if they don't want to, but they think they should. So I think what we need to try and do as coaches and spectators is allow, especially the kids, to play football. And I've got a 7-year-old boy who I go to watch on a Sunday with the development league school, but I don't get involved. I just stand on the side, encourage, and even if I think the referee has made the wrong decision, whatever, just let them play. So I think it's to consider what the referee is feeling on the field of play as well, especially when they're a young team, because the pressures are huge.
Suppose, Seth, with your experience, you touched on it before, when you started refereeing, obviously you're very young now, younger when you started, and refereeing players that you played with, so it must have been a different form for you.
Yeah, I think it changes the dynamic totally. I mean, when you go from being the equals as players to suddenly having some elements of authority, and people are listening to the decisions and expecting you to make these decisions, and it does sort of change the dynamic. I mean, look, as Patrick alluded to earlier, it can be very difficult in a small place like Gibraltar, but it can also be beneficial if you can build that relationship with those players, and it does completely change the dynamic. In my personal experience, I did find that it was harder, not just with the players who were my age, but more with the parents, because these are when you're a young child, no matter how confident you are, at the end of the day you are still a child. Yeah. So to have any sort of parents looking down and making any sort of comments, I don't think that happens anywhere else. When you've got young children who are trying to do things to enjoy themselves, the same as the players in the youth league are there to learn. Our referees, and certainly myself when I was that age, were there equally to learn. So I think that was possibly the biggest challenge, having adults criticizing you when you were still a child and trying to learn.
And how would you say, how did you deal with that, or how have you learned to deal with that?
I think one of the most important things is, and look, this isn't exclusive to football, is just learning from whom to take any criticism and any advice from. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's many people who get blinded by the football pitch and forget what's actually at stake here, which is the development of our youth players. Young Gibraltarians who turn up to the Victoria Stadium every weekend trying to enjoy a game of football can sometimes be overshadowed by the unfortunate reality, which is overexcited parents. But as long as you sort of take, because look, we've got fantastic coaches here who have been very, very supportive when I was doing my refereeing. I mean, the education system which we have for coaches, I think, has improved a lot over my time. So certainly, picking and choosing from who to receive criticism and take this on board was one of the biggest or most influential parts to my game. I think, you're not going to listen to somebody in the stands who's screaming at her 11-year-old son to kick somebody else, rather than maybe listening to a coach who's been involved in local football for many years. And in terms of our coaching, I've been very fortunate to have people like Dennis Alvarez, Alex Lopez, Adrian Bacarisa come to the stadium every weekend and offer our developing referees coaching and advice.
In terms of, or people might not know this, but anyone can sort of report an incident if they see it. How would they go about this?
There's numerous ways. I mean, there's always a team match delegate, always, that is there on the field, which is you're able to report something if it's urgent, as an example. And then also sometimes I receive some emails as well from clubs, or they can also report it through to the coordinator, which is through Tiago da Costa, and then also straight into the GFA. But they should also maybe even report it through to their club first, I'll probably say. It would be a definite thing that they should want to be doing. It also depends. I think the severity of what the offence is also is a big one. I think when anything to do with safeguarding is probably has to be done urgently. So just act straight away. Just make sure it gets reported, and just not be a bystander.
Brings us on to this next part, which is the campaigns that we're seeing now, that such as like respect the referee and all that. It might seem like an obvious question, But how important is stuff like this?
As I said before, the referees are just human like anybody else, and the pressures that they have on the field of play is immense, especially the younger they are, even more so, because they just want to perform. They just want to provide a service towards the players on the field, and be able to also improve and get on and get the job done.
And Seth, one final question for you before we start wrapping things up. It's obviously a very high pressure job. Like Patrick said, everyone makes mistakes. Can you share an example of a time that you maybe made a mistake, realizing how you've gone about sort of dealing with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's games which spring to mind where I've obviously made a decision which was incorrect, and I knew at the time, something's wrong. I mean, not to the extent where I was 100% certain so I could go back and revert my decision, but certainly where you get that feel that something's not quite right. And look, one of the hardest things as a referee is that feeling, because you don't go out to make mistakes. You go out to protect the safety of the players and deliver the game in a fair way, and ultimately get these decisions right. That's what we're there to do. So when that doesn't happen, you start to have a bit of a worrying feeling, and whether you like to say it or not, it does play on your mind. I think one of the biggest
robots.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're all human, the same way as if a striker misses an open opportunity, that's gonna play on his mind, and the same happens to us as referees. We're all human at the end of the day, and it's tough. And certainly going back after the game, it's tough. You want to get those decisions right. It's not the game finishes, you go home, and that's it. It does play on your mind. It affects the way that you deal with your family members. I mean, family have been extremely supportive, friends, colleagues. My partner, she's been very very supportive when things maybe haven't gone right, and the all you can do is learn from it. Make sure you can dissect the reason as to why it's happening. Has it happened because of poor positioning? Has it happened because of poor communication with your teammates? And as soon as you sort of assess these situations, and we're very fortunate here to have referee coaches who will sit down and evaluate these situations. We go back, we listen to the audio to see maybe what the root of the problem is, and hopefully we can work on from it. It's not the game doesn't finish at 90 minutes for us. We need to obviously learn from our mistakes and hopefully improve to ensure that they're not repeated mistakes.
Yeah, I think the observers are very key here, which we haven't mentioned, because they take the time to come in and watch the game, and they spend hours after a match providing feedback, video clips towards the referee's performance and how they've done, and the work on points as well. That is plays a huge part in their development as referees, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, I just want to thank you guys for coming on, for sharing your experiences, your insight. Lastly, Patrick, obviously as the referee manager, if someone's interested in becoming a referee, what should they do? How can they get in touch? How can they take the first step?
I think if they're that's our biggest thing that we have at the moment is the players especially not knowing that they can actually referee and play at the same time. Of course, depending on what age and what category they are and what league they play in, then they cannot referee in the same league. Of course they can't. But it's very important for them to know that they can referee and play at the same time. So that's the first thing they need to know. They can email there's a GFA email account, which it goes in there, and then if there's anything to do with referee, it comes straight to my direction. Any delegate, which is if they're around the stadium, if they just go up to the delegate, speak to them, ask them, one of the coaches, even in their own teams, if they're a bit shy or don't know who to speak to, just flag it up through their team. And then one of the coaches or the secretary will get in touch with me and let me know that 2 or 3 players from their team is interested. And then once I get in contact with myself, then I will send them the online course to be completed. It's completed in their own time, as and when. And then once they've done that, then we organise face-to-face training, and that's when we start to do the practicals. So the procedure of it is very straightforward. And then it's just about getting them into training and then preparing them to get on the field of play. So in short, they could be there within a month. Also, so it's not even that long. Because of course we put them into junior football at first, where they start off with the under 8s, which is very straightforward and very easy at the moment. and then depending on their progression, they'll then start to go up the age categories.
Brilliant. Well, I just say thank you to everyone for listening to episode 2. Remember to follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.